We have the ice finger of death. This footage was captured by the BBC off the coast of Antarctica. A creepy, twisting column of ice reaches down to the sea floor and then begins to spread out, killing every living thing it touches. You can see it here just wiping out a whole colony of unwitting crabs. It's caused by new sea ice forming at the surface of the water that is so salty it begins to sink and freeze. This is called a brinicle. Now, at first it baffled scientists and scared people who saw the footage, with some people calling it slow lightning and wondering if larger versions could form that could actually threaten humans. For now, though, scientists are continuing to unpick this fascinating mystery and study the ice fingers of death. Moving on to number 9 now, we have the Millennium Falcon. In June 2011, a scan of the ocean floor near Sweden and Finland revealed something very strange. It looked, and there's no other way to say this, like the Millennium Falcon spaceship from Star Wars. Don't believe me? Take a look for yourself. It was found at the bottom of the Baltic Sea, and scientists were absolutely baffled. In the absence of any real answers, people just started coming up with their own theories, which ranged from a simple rock formation to a crashed UFO. Eventually, a team from Ocean X went down there to investigate. At first, they thought it was just a stone cliff, but as they approached it, they realized it was more in the shape of a giant mushroom with rounded sides and rugged edges. It had an egg-shaped hole at the top, as well as strange circle formations that looked like small fireplaces. They were even covered in something that looked like soot. The team concluded that it must be a natural formation, but they don't understand how it was formed, especially because no volcanic activity has ever been reported in the Baltic Sea. Do any of you have any good theories? Next up at number 8 now, we have the underwater pyramid. A few years ago, a huge anomaly was found off the west coast of Mexico. To many people, it looked like a pyramid, but deep underwater. Now, of course, this caused an explosion online among UFO enthusiasts who believed it to be an ancient relic of an alien civilization. It was first spotted by UFO enthusiast Marcelo Igazusta, who was using Google Earth to search for signs of global UFO activity. Now, to this day, you can still use his coordinates to go and see that feature on Google Earth. It's thought to be about 11 miles across, which would make it about 10 times the size of the Great Pyramid of Cholula, the largest known pyramid structure on the planet to date. The area is a hotbed of volcanic activity, and the feature may very well be a product of that, but this hasn't stopped the UFO enthusiasts searching for more answers. Moving on to number 7 now, we have the underwater rivers. In Mexico's Yucatan Peninsula lies a very interesting phenomenon, underwater rivers, and they look like this. But how exactly does this happen? Well, basically, when the limestone bedrock collapses, it sinks and forms a pit. This creates a reservoir that then fills up with a mixture of fresh and groundwater and salt water. Finally, when organic matter ends up in there and decomposes, it produces hydrogen sulfide, which separates the fresh water at the top from the seawater below. Now, all of this understanding is quite a recent thing. To the first divers that saw this, it simply looked like an underwater river. Next up at number 6 now, we have the Milky Sea. For centuries, sailors who have been out to the most distant parts of the ocean kept reporting a mysterious phenomenon all over the world, the Milky Sea. Miles and miles of pale, milky, glowing water. When they returned, many people didn't believe them or thought they were just mistaken. But in the modern era, sailors are still reporting it. Finally, in 2005, a group of scientists led by Dr. Stephen Miller of the Naval Research Laboratory in Monterey, California, decided to investigate. They studied reported cases and found that on at least one occasion, there was a bioluminescent bacteria in the water known as Vibrio harveyi. In order for them to cause the effects that have been described, they would have to congregate in massive numbers, and that is still very much a mystery. There are theories out there, but the Milky Sea story is not over yet. And I think that's really cool. Moving on to number 5 now, we have Pavlopetri. This is an ancient Greek city, thought to be over 5,000 years old. In 1000 BC, an earthquake resulted in the entire city being swallowed up by the sea. The area never re-emerged again, and so it has been relatively well preserved. Entire roads, houses, gardens, temples, and cemeteries are almost as they were the day they were flooded. In 2009, scientists used sonar mapping techniques developed by the military to make Pavlopetri the first submerged town to be digitally surveyed in 3D. Now, scientists have a big task ahead of them to figure out who these people were, what their lives were like, and where did they go when their homes sunk beneath the waves. Next up at number 4 now, we have the giant squid. For centuries, sailors told tales of the Kraken, an impossibly big squid-like creature that lived at the bottom of the ocean, only surfacing to smash up ships and drag sailors down to their watery graves. Although the Kraken has now fallen into folklore, a very real creature may have taken its place, the giant squid. It can grow up to 55 feet long and was never even photographed alive until 2004. Scientists know very little about this creature. They don't know its daily behavior patterns. They don't know whether it comes to the surface or remains deep at the bottom of the ocean all of the time. They don't know how fast it can swim, whether it uses its tentacles to catch prey. They don't even know what it eats or how long they live for. The giant squid may prove to be one of the last mysteries of the ocean, forever lurking below the depths of human knowledge. Moving on to number 3 now, we have the immortal jellyfish. Some humans search for immortality. One species may already have the answer to that. The scientific name for this jellyfish is Turritopsis dawni. Its nickname is the immortal jellyfish. Just like every other living thing, it ages, except when it comes to the point where it should start dying, the immortal jellyfish just says, nah. It then reverts back to its sexually immature stage, essentially becoming a child again. Their tentacles retract, their bodies shrink, and they sink to the ocean floor to start their whole cycle all over again. Now, scientists still aren't sure about how the jellyfish are able to do this. That's one reason to study them. Another is that if we find out how they're doing this, we could use it to fight old age diseases in humans, or maybe even figure out immortality for ourselves. Do you think that's a good idea, though? At the number 2 spot now, we have the purple orb. In 2016, the team operating the exploration vessel Nautilus came across a strange purple orb on the ocean floor off the coast of California, and it appeared to be alive. The scientists were stumped. They had never seen anything like it before. They joked about it being a spider egg sac or a tiny mama octopus. They even nicknamed it Blobus purpurus, and they weren't the only ones who were interested in it. A crab was there too. The crab was just knocking this purple blob around, and the team had to basically prise it from its claws to retrieve it. After taking it back to a lab to study, scientists were very puzzled as to what exactly it was. After analyzing it though, they believed it to be a variant of a sea slug, a purple orb sea slug. And finally, number 1 now, we have the bloop. In 1997, the bloop sound was heard deep underwater in the Pacific by multiple listening stations that were thousands of miles apart. Take a listen to the famous bloop.
Are you interested in starting your own faceless YouTube automation channel, but all people do is tell you to go to Fiverr and Upwork?
What was that? It was a total mystery. What made the bloop sound? Theories started to arise. Many believed that it was made by a massive, unknown animal that had been awoken at the bottom of the ocean. But what could make a noise that loud? After studying the noise, NOAA, the research group, had determined that the noise wasn't made by an animal, but rather a natural event instead. They believed that it was the cracking of an ice shelf breaking up in Antarctica that sent sound waves right through the Pacific. Now, of course, even to this day, there's a hardcore group of people that still believe the bloop was definitely animal-made.
So the first and most obvious question is what happened? For a while, there was a lot of speculation. The dive had just begun. It left its support vessel, an icebreaker that ferried the small submersible out to the site of the Titanic wreckage where it began its descent. And just an hour and 45 minutes later, all contact with the submersible was completely lost. Now, this isn't unheard of. There have been other dives, including previous ones made by the Titan itself, where contact was lost for a period of time, so there was a chance the crew were still alive. Unfortunately, though, on Thursday, June 22nd, a French deep-sea robot discovered what looked to be debris of some kind, which was confirmed just a few hours later to be the Titan's tail cone. More debris was discovered, and it's been confirmed the Titan had suffered a catastrophic implosion. But we still don't know what caused this implosion. Was the submersible simply structurally unsound from the start, or did it receive some kind of damage during its descent? There is a chance we may never know. And the next question question on a lot of people's minds is what took so long? I'll get to that in a minute, but in terms of the sequence of events, for the first few days of the search, there was hope. The search and rescue teams believed the Titan to either be below the water or somewhere above it, but after Canadian and U.S. Coast Guards had combed the area extensively with ships and aircrafts, it became pretty clear that if the missing submersible was bobbing on the water somewhere, it would have been spotted. So it was determined that the submersible had either sunk or was completely destroyed. So again, why wasn't the debris discovered sooner? Well, first of all, we still don't know exactly when the vessel imploded. Second of all, the depth the Titan was at is very deep. Finding a very tiny submersible like this is extremely difficult, especially when it's in pieces, and there aren't many vessels that can descend to that depth. It's hard to picture just how deep 12,500 feet is. This image here shows some famous landmarks compared to the depth of the Titanic wreckage, which really shows like the sheer scope of this situation. The Titanic wreck is twice the depth of the Grand Canyon. Not only that, but it's incredibly dark and murky down there. Finding a tiny vessel like this so deep down is like searching for a needle in a haystack. The next question we have surrounding this whole incident is why? And this is mostly in relation to the passengers on board. There are some very prominent, powerful people on board, and this has, of course, led to some people online speculating or just wondering perhaps this incident was somehow planned. I don't really want to get into stuff like this. Once again, there's just no evidence that would lead me to believe that this is the case. People are just saying this because the men on board are rich, and while conspiracies have been known to take place, there are also so many that are just completely baseless. And the fact of the matter is, expeditions like this are dangerous and accidents happen. At the end of the day, though, it is almost impossible to know for sure. Speaking of how dangerous a dive like this is, though, let's talk about the conditions of the Titan itself. Over the past few days, it's been coming to light that this vessel was rather precarious in its construction, that perhaps it just wasn't ready to be doing deep dives like this. David Pogue, a CBS News reporter, joined the crew of an OceanGate Titanic expedition last year and made a statement about the conditions of the submersible. He said, "I couldn't help noticing how many pieces of the sub seemed improvised." Pogue was also shown a video game controller by Stockton Rush, the CEO, which he said was used to control the whole vessel. Now, that's actually not unheard of. These types of controllers are used more frequently than you might think. However, he also read some of the waiver which stated the sub is an quote, experimental submersible vessel that has not been approved or certified by any regulatory body and could result in physical injury, disability, emotional trauma, or death. And that is going to lead us into our next point. Titan was not classed. This means the vessel didn't undergo the proper testing and inspection needed to have it approved as being, up to industry standards. According to Stockton Rush, the CEO, and one of the passengers, unfortunately, aboard the missing submersible, the decision was made in order to avoid a multi-year approval process. Essentially, its rollout was rushed, and Rush has made it quite clear in the past that regulations aren't much of a concern for him. Innovation has always been his main goal, and that regulations often hold back this desired progression, according to him. He stated in a 2019 interview that they have all these regulations, but it also hasn't innovated or grown because they have all these regulations. So next, I want to talk about the fact that OceanGate was actually sued at one point. These concerns about the safety of this experimental vessel haven't just come from people with no experience or knowledge of the subject. In 2018, a former employee of OceanGate, David Lottridge, ended up filing a lawsuit against the company, saying he had been wrongfully terminated after voicing concerns about the Titan submersible. Lottridge is a submarine pilot who made complaints that the Titan wasn't capable of descending to the depths it was being designed for. At the time he voiced his concerns, he was the director of marine operations. It was his responsibility to bring concerns like this forward to make sure passengers and crew would be safe. He refused to greenlight manned tests of the early models of the submersible, and what happened? He was fired, and not only that, he was sued for revealing confidential information about the company, which was a breach
around for ages. Picture this, back in the early 1900s, a gnarly house fire burned down this building and it's game over for everyone inside. Now, the story goes that the ghosts of these poor souls are still lurking around, both in the building and in the woods nearby. People who've dared to venture there have reported some wild stuff, like laughter and cries echoing the place. But here's where it gets even crazier. It was a satanic cult spot where they did some messed up rituals, while others think it's just a messed up orphanage with no supernatural vibes. Now, I gotta say that there's no hard evidence to back up these claims, but the legend lives on, my friends. Ghost hunters and paranormal buffs keep rolling in, even though it's a no-go zone because it's technically private property. So, you know, spooky stuff happens in Ohio too. At number 9, the Spring Grove Cemetery. Cemeteries are like a magnet for spooky stuff, and the Spring Grove Cemetery in Cincinnati, Ohio is no exception. It's like the second biggest cemetery in the whole US of A, which is like prime real estate for ghostly shenanigans. One story that stands out is about this dude named C.C. Brewer, who was like an optometrist. Before he kicked the bucket, however, he was all, yo, take my eyes out and stick them on my gravestone. But relax, because they're not real eyes, just some glass ones. But people swear those fake eyes follow them around like a creepy optical illusion. And then there's this caretaker who was all alone one night and something tugged at his pants. The dude freaked out and bolted and came back later thinking he'd find like a snake or something, but nope, just graves. If you're enjoying the video so far, you can support the channel by subscribing to Most Amazing and ringing that notification bell. At number 8 is the Lima Tuberculosis Hospital. This place opened its doors back in 1911, dealing with the gruesome tuberculosis cases of the time. In the 60s, they slapped the name Ottawa Valley Hospital on it, but it didn't stick around for long, because it shut down in the 70s. Now picture this. It's a hospital that's been abandoned for over 5 decades. It's like a real-life horror movie set, crumbling and sinister. But the real kicker is that people claim some of the patients who met their unfortunate end at this hospital might still be lurking around. Yep, you heard me right. Ghost hunters eager to get a scare have snuck in and swear they've seen spirits roaming the haunted hallways. Trespassing here is a big no-no though, so don't go thinking about your own ghost hunting adventure there, unless you're a rule breaker. But hey, as long as the place is still standing, it's hands down one of Ohio's most bone-chilling haunts. At number 7 is the Hook Man. This spine-tingling Ohio legend in the village of New Richmond. He's a ghastly figure with a hook for a hand. Yeah, the classic hook-handed ghost story, but Ohio's got its own twist on it. There's this doctor and his wife living on Pond Run Road. They had a mentally disturbed son locked up in the basement most of the time. And one stormy night, lightning strikes their house, turning it into an inferno. When the authorities show up, their parents are toast, but no sign of the boy. Just a severed hand chained to the wall. Creepy, right? Now the boy grows up lurking the woods, stealing from nearby homes. Couples end up unalived, and folks think it's the Hook Man's doing. Classic stuff, like a couple making out in the car, hearing a weird noise, and the guy decides to investigate, but bam, hooked to the cranium. At number 6, the Coin Mansfield incident. So picture this. It's 1973 in Mansfield, Ohio, and you've got these 4 National Guard dudes just chilling in a helicopter doing their thing. But then, out of nowhere, bam, they spot this massive metallic frisbee-looking thing up in the sky. I mean, UFO alert. These guys aren't your average UFO spotters though. They're trained military pilots, so they know their stuff. And guess what? This mysterious disc isn't just hanging out. It starts creeping towards them. Panic mode activated. They dodge and weave, but the UFO just won't quit. It's like playing tag with an ET, but way less fun. They report the whole shebang, and even the military and the FAA think it's legit. Radar data and ground witnesses back up their story too. But here's the kicker. Nobody can explain what the heck that thing was. UFO or not, it's a spine-tingling story that still haunts Ohio's history. At number 5, the Franklin Castle in Cleveland is a doozy. This place, built in the 1800s, screams Victorian elegance, but beneath that gentle facade lies a sinister tale that sends shivers down your spine. Haynes Tiedemann, the OG owner, had this castle built for his family, but tragedy lurked within its walls. One night, his family fell victim to infectious diseases and other mysterious causes, and eventually the parents followed suit. After the Tiedemans, another family moved in, and guess what? They kicked the bucket too, right there in the castle. Some even suspect foul play, like a real-life Agatha Christie novel. And let's not forget the secret rooms and hidden passageways. People think that those might have been used to stash bodies. So if you ever find yourself in the Franklin Castle, keep an eye out for ghostly apparitions lurking chanting in the hallways. At number 4 is Helltown, Ohio. Forget about the name. Boston Mills was once a charming spot in the 1950s and 60s, but in the 70s, it got hit by a shocker. See, President Gerald Ford suddenly tells everyone, pack up and leave. Why? Because the US government had plans for a national park on the same land. But here's the twist, they never bulldozed the place, and the park never saw the light of day. So what gives? People started to speculate. Did they find something spooky? Some swear the town's church got into some satanic business, while others are convinced that a rusty old school bus by the main road is a ghostly hotspot. And brace yourselves for the weirdest part of all, rumors of mutilated citizens dwelling in the village. The truth is that it's locked away, buried in the mysterious history of Helltown. At number 3 is Beavers Creek State Park, Ohio, which is more than just a nature's haven. It's a hub spot of scary tales that keep residents up at night. One haunting centers around a woman who met a watery demise in the creek. Her body never recovered. Now her ghost roams the park, forever searching for her vanished kin. Eerie encounters don't stop there, though. Historic structures like Gadsden's Mill and the log cabins have their own ghostly stories. Visitors have felt those hair-raising chills and the sensation of being watched, especially after sundown. And if that's not enough, there's the infamous headless motorcyclist.
Headless motorcyclist, is that like supposed to be an upgrade from Headless
along the
Horseman?
park's road. Now his phantom cruises the park on a never-ending quest for his lost noggin. Some have claimed to spot his ghostly silhouette on a motorcycle, while others hear the distant roar of a phantom engine. Beaver Creek isn't just for nature lovers, it's a paranormal playground for the daring. At number 2 is Unalive Man's Curve in Cleveland. Back in 1969, a car full of teens smashed into a speeding 1969 Roadrunner, leaving just one survivor. But that's not even the creepiest part. At the intersection of State Routes 125 and 222, where this tragic accident happened, there have been some spine-tingling sightings. People claim they've seen a faceless hitchhiker lurking there between 120 and 140 in the dead of night. Sometimes this ghostly figure stands in the middle of the road, causing drivers to swerve dangerously. And get this, if you don't dodge him in time, witnesses say he'll phase right through your car and start chasing it down the road before disappearing into thin air. But wait, there's more. Some folks say they've spotted either an Impala or a Roadrunner cruising down along the road with no one in the driver's seat. It's one of Claremont County's most haunted spots, so if you visit, remember to keep your eyes on the road if you dare. At number 1, have you ever heard of the place called Melon Heads from Ohio? It's like something straight out of a horror movie. A group of messed up, deformed folks with giant heads that look like melons. Freaky, right? Legend has it that they lurk in the woods around Kirtland, just waiting to give you the creeps. But here's the kicker. These poor souls were supposedly normal people once, but some evil mad scientists messed them up real bad with cruel experiments. They managed to escape, and now they're hiding out in the woods, surviving by hunting and staying far away from society. Some stories say they're aggressive, attacking anyone who dares set foot on their territory. Others say they're more mysterious, popping in and out like ghosts in the woods. Either way, it's a chilling tale that'll make you think twice about going near those Ohio forests. And that pretty much wraps it out for today. As always, if there's a haunting Ohio tale that you think I've missed, feel free to let me know down in the comments. This has been AJ Spatola with Most Amazing, and I'll catch you all in another video. Later.
Are you still wearing enough layers to insulate Alaska? That's why you need the new and improved Bearskin hoodie. The 6-pocket Bearskin fleece tactical hoodie that blocks wind and regulates heat for incredible comfort, wherever you are. Thousands of men across the world already love wearing the Bearskin hoodie instead of their regular hoodies. Why? Because sure, your average fleece hoodie provides decent insulation to keep you warm, but as soon as you go outside, it gets windy, and you get cold. That's why we designed the Bearskin hoodie with improved wind-insulation technology on the waist, arms, and hood. Plus, an extended storm flap that runs the length of the front zip to block wind double time. Finally, A functional hoodie you can actually take outside. You're seeing this video because we want to offer you 60% off your bearskin hoodie today with free delivery. And you might not see this video again, so head over to stopbadhoodies.com or scan the QR code on the screen to activate the 60% off deal. Because just like you, we hate carrying man bags, duffel bags, or messenger bags on top of our hoodies. Because hey, you're not a messenger, you're a man. That's why this hoodie has 9 pockets, with 6 secure zip pockets on the outside, and 3 super soft inner pockets too. With premium zipper attachments across the 2 front pockets, 2 arm pockets, and 2 extra pockets at the back. This is a hoodie you can take out in the wild, wear at home or in the office, or while climbing.
Kicking off the list at number 10, Katie Rocks. You ever hop in the shower first thing in the morning and it feels like literal paradise? Otherworldly, some would say. Well, a new TikTok trend has me meditating in the shower now. Apparently, here we go. TikTok users left, right, and center are stepping forward, or rather backwards, with their claims on entering parallel universes. Nashville model Katie Rocks recently kicked this off, and she used the social media platform to recall a 2017 trip to Paris that some of her classmates claimed missed the flight, although Katie saw them with her own eyes. I remember walking on that aircraft past 2 of my friends and sitting like 3 rows behind them. Then the 4 of us took a taxi back to the apartments we were staying in while we were in school, and I distinctly remember this. 2 days later, they're talking about how they weren't 3 rows in front of us, and to this day, I have no idea why they remember missing the flight. That's way too close to the plot of Final Destination. Honestly, this creeps me out just reading about it. I can't even begin to unravel this one. No way. The same user, Katie Rocks, posted again a month later, this time saying she's since discovered the ability to shift realities. Showers. Hot showers are the key, apparently. I would have guessed baths, but showers are cool too. We'll take those.
Coming in at number 8, we have Euronymous. This story really freaking gives me the creeps. Basically, a Norwegian black metal fan believes that he's stuck in the wrong universe. So the story was posted by I Love Transylvania on Reddit. They asked for help and advice. It all started when he woke up and found out that his favorite musician, Euronymous, had died. But not recently. He died in 1993. Immediately, he thought that this was some kind of joke because just recently he had seen him in concert. The year he saw him was 2013, which is 20 years after his death, which is physically impossible. Not only that, but in the early 2000s, he bumped into him in a shop and even bought a record from him there. Not only that, but he can't seem to get in contact with any of his friends. He tries calling.
But see,
and
this is the
texting,
day and
but the
age where a
numbers
lot
are
of
all out of
motherfuckers
service.
can take that
So this
clout,
guy
you know, and be
either
whatever they
thinks he's
want to
going
be.
insane,
You get what I'm talking
or he
about?
somehow
You can get the
got
right type of
transported
following.
to
These
another
motherfuckers could do
universe, our
whatever they
current
want to
one, in
be,
which
bro. This shit
Euronymous
is like
passed away in
sad. You feel me?
1993. In our 7th spot today, we have The Man from Torrid. Now, this might be a perfect example of some accidental dimension jumping. Now, you might be sick of hearing me talk about this story, but it literally blows my mind. It's one of my favorite stories, so I'm sharing it again. For those of you who don't know, in July of 1954, a well-dressed man arrived at the Haneda airport in Tokyo, Japan. When he was questioned at customs, he said he was from a place called Torrid. However,
Yeah, I remember
as we
this
know,
Torrid story. I
is
believe
not a
this
real
shit.
place. So immediately the officers were like, red flag, detain him. Later he was placed in a hotel and was monitored by 2 guards. In the hotel, his room was placed high up and there was only one entry and exit point. Yet he still managed to escape. How he managed to escape is physically impossible. So, some people think that Torrid is a real place, but it's located in a different universe. And this man somehow passed through a parallel dimension and ended up at the airport. Others think that it's all just a made-up legend. If so, then why did the story get international news and wind up in the papers? I don't know, it's up to you. You believe whatever, but I think it's freaking creepy. Coming in at number 6,
Nah, I
we
believe
have
that
the
shit is
parallel
real, man. Niggas be
drivers.
realm
You're about
jumping
to
and don't
notice
even
a
be
trend
understanding
here.
it. That's
A
where a
number
lot of these
parallel
stories
universe
come from.
stories feature
You know, like-
cars and car accidents.
Like, for
It's
instance, be
quite
like
weird.
Snow White.
Like this one. So this next
All the
guy
different
was
Disney
visiting his
princess
grandparents
stories
when
and
he was
theories and
almost
so on
hit
and
by
so
a
forth.
car.
Those are just
So
different
he was in a
realms,
car
bro.
park when a
For real,
car
for real.
nearly hit him and another car. As the car passed him, he got a look at the passengers. And that's when he knew that something was very off. In the car, there were 3 passengers, a woman, her daughter, and a male driver. What was weird is that they were all staring, looking forward, with no emotion on their face whatsoever. It looked as if they were all just zoned out or in another world, maybe quite literally. As the car continued driving by, he realized that
Sticker Mill's production process makes it easy to get your custom products fast. You simply select a size and quantity, upload your artwork, and breeze through checkout. As soon as you place your order, our team begins creating a free digital proof based on your artwork. During this process, we add cut lines or borders based on your instructions and file. We'll even fix low-resolution artwork for you. Within a few hours, you'll receive a notification that your proof is ready. Your proof shows exactly how we intend to produce your order. You can request changes for free or cancel your order anytime before approval.
It was his family's car. Freaking out, thinking that their car had been stolen, he ran to his family, only to find the car parked in the grandparents' driveway. Now, I don't have an explanation for this one. I really don't. But it seems like the people in that car were from another dimension and were unaware that they were appearing elsewhere. Seems like the two universes might have merged for that second. We're now at our 5th and halfway mark with deja vu. After all this time, scientists don't have a clear explanation for deja vu. They believe that everyday deja vu experiences might be linked to the memories in our temporal area, but they have yet to prove this or come up with any other explanations. Others believe that deja vu occurs when different universes are in sync for a short period of time. For example, maybe in one universe you picked up a bottle of wine to pour yourself a glass, but maybe a different version of yourself in another universe picked up a beer. This happened at the same time, so you're in sync for that moment.
Smoke
And that's when you
team.
get that feeling. Like, didn't I just do this? It's because your other self did something similar. Coming in at number 4, we have precognitive dreams. Precognitive dreams are dreams that can predict the future, or they can provide you with information that you wouldn't have otherwise known. There are a number of people that have had this happen to them, including myself. I've had dreams and then the next day it's come true, and there's no possible way for me to have known that this was going to happen. In fact, we have a whole series on dreams that have predicted the future, so if you want, check that out as well. Anyways, one theory is that these dreams are signals from your other self in a different universe. Maybe something is about to happen in your life and has already happened in their life. Or they're sending you a signal in your sleep to warn you about upcoming dangers. Moving on to number 3, we have the change of route. A couple of years ago, the next narrator was walking to work one day when they all of a sudden had an urge to take a different path. Every day, they took the same route, but today, they decided to go down a different way. So they turned and went down an alley. Now, I mean, any normal person would be like, no, don't go down that creepy dark alley, you're gonna get mugged or killed. But something was telling this guy that he needed to go down that way. So he did. And that's when he zoned out. He said that his mind went scrambled. He also said, and I quote, "I felt like I didn't have a body anymore, just that I was a semi-conscious entity floating through some weird dimension. All of a sudden, in the array of different colors and shapes, a vision came to me. It was a bunch of strange-looking people that, in my mind, resembled businessmen in suits. They looked startled and panicked that I could see them. One of the people made a quick movement, and everything turned black. Then, when he snapped out of this, he found himself on a completely different street, back on his way to work." I don't have an explanation for this. Honestly, it seems like for a split second he was looking into another universe or something, though. In our second spot, we have the close call. Several years ago, this guy worked at Little Caesar's Pizza. He worked as one of those sign spinners, you know, to get people into the store. One day, while sign spinning, he saw a van heading straight at him. It drove over the curb and hit him directly. He felt it crush him against the street post. Then everything turned black. All of a sudden, he gasped and he was awake and still alive. He's still in the corner and he's still holding his sign. No car was there, he was alive. Since he was shaken from the experience, he decided to go inside the store for his break. As he walked away, he heard a loud crash. As he turned around, he saw the same van crash into the street post where he had been standing. So maybe in another universe, he died from that car crash. In this universe, he survived. And in our number 1 spot today, we have the portal. There's a cabin in the Marcahuasi Stone Forest in Peru that apparently is a ticket to another dimension. This story was told by a woman who...
Wild Turkey is a high-proof bourbon. The burn, I call delicious spice. It may not be for you, it may not, but when you try it, you know, okay, this is some quality bourbon right here.
one day was out camping in the forest with her friends. That's when they heard music coming from another area in the forest, so they decided to follow the sound and check it out. Then they came across a small stone cabin. It was illuminated by torches. What was weird is that they could see in through the windows, and the people inside were wearing 17th century fashion. The women, being curious, decided to go check it out. In fact, one of the friends was a little too curious, and she tried entering the cabin. She stepped foot inside when her friend pulled her away. Instantly, half of her body became paralyzed. It was the half that entered the cabin. To this day, she still remains paralyzed on that side of her body. So it's believed that this cabin would have taken them to another dimension. Since half of her body entered another dimension and then was yanked out, it threw off her nervous system, resulting in her partial paralysis.
Starting off in our number 10 spot, we have two phones. This story had my mind absolutely blown, but when I looked at the replies, it was brought to a whole new level. This story reads, quote, "Okay, I know this sounds a bit crazy. So to start off my story, my mom and dad are divorced and my dad just came to pick me up. But yesterday my mom got an infection somewhere in her lower abdomen. While my dad was driving to his house, my dad started to call my mom and she picked up. But they couldn't hear each other. So my dad hung up, but then like 20 seconds later, we both got a call at the same time, but by two different numbers. We both answered, and on the other line was my mom. We started talking and she sounded the same, but like I said, they were two different numbers, and me and my dad are just sitting there looking at each other like, are we losing our minds? We started to talk to, quote, my mom, and she was saying two different things while we were both talking to her. And now, I don't know if I'm losing my mind or what. Okay, so I was like, that story is really strange and I don't really have an explanation for what could have happened there. Then I look at the replies because you know who always has explanations? Redditors. And one user replied with their theory that this was a case of a temporary reality slip or merge. Like, what in the world is that? My mind is blown. In our number 9 spot today, we have The Nap. This wild story took place in 2022, and it starts off with the storyteller explaining that in that year, they took a nap and woke up in 2014. When they woke up, they were on the couch at their old job in their old uniform on a break. They knew something was wrong and that they were back in time, but to make matters weirder, they were like their 2020 self and what they look like currently, but they were in the year 2014, if that makes sense. From here they wrote, quote, "I looked around and ran down the hallway when my manager stopped me and asked me what was wrong. I asked him what year it was and he said 2014. I insisted to him it was 2020. I ran up the stairs and everyone was looking at me. Everyone was acting like I worked there the last 6 years and nothing changed. Everyone asked me what was wrong. Then they head to the apartment that they lived in 2014 and it looked exactly the same, and their parents were there who also confirmed that the year was 2014 and also began asking what was wrong and what was going on. This is when the story takes the craziest turn though. They open their bedroom door and their ex is lying in their bed, but this ex is also the current 2020 version of themselves, not the 2014 version, and they too have this awareness that they're back in time. They then went on to write, quote, "They told me they," meaning the ex, "brought me back. They were fully aware of what was happening. After talking for what felt like days in our old apartment, they left, and I went back to sleep in my own bed and woke up back in 2020 in my bed. I truly can't explain what on earth happened here, but it definitely is unbelievable." In our number 8 spot today, we have Parallel You. This strange story starts out with the storyteller setting the scene for us. They wrote, quote, "This happened about 5 years ago when I lived with my parents. It was about 5 minutes after 8 a.m. and I had woken up, went downstairs and sat in the recliner. Dad was sleeping on the couch and Mom was in the kitchen cooking breakfast, biscuits and gravy. Everything was normal." Okay, this sounds like a great time so far, but just wait. They then explained that they moved from the recliner to the dining room, and then boom, suddenly they're at their friend Paul's house like they've been there the whole time. There are a couple other people there, and someone who's underneath a jacked up car working on it. This is when they write, quote, "The guy underneath the car asked me to hand him the new muffler that was laying right beside where I was standing. I picked it up. I remember it had some weight to it. I recall the heat of the sun hitting me in the face. It was about 12 or 1 o'clock in the afternoon. I knelt down to give him the muffler and the weight being lifted off when I handed it to him. It was just all so vivid." So now, when the storyteller went to stand back up, they heard this sound that was similar to the splash sound that occurs when somebody jumps into a pool. Immediately, the sound then went into reverse, and then there was a loud clap sound, and now they're back in their dining room. They go on to write, quote, I looked around, looked at the clock, and it was only 8:12. Dad was still on the couch, Mom was still cooking breakfast, and I went into the kitchen to ask her what that loud clap was. She gave me a puzzled look and said, what clap? I covered it up by saying it must have been on TV, and I sat back down trying to process what had just happened, knowing if I tried to tell her what happened that she might think I'm crazy. So I dropped it and moved on with my day as normal. I've never had anything like this happen before or since. They finish off their post by saying that they think they might have transported temporarily to their body in an alternate reality, and to be completely honest, I have no other ideas of what could have gone on here. In our number 7 spot today, we have Who Was That? Okay, I'm gonna need your opinion on this one and what you guys think is going on here, because this one has me a bit confused. So, this post says, quote, this happened about 2 years ago. So my fiance and I were lying down in the living room. His face is facing towards me and my face is towards him. My face is looking towards the wall behind him and his face is towards the living room space. On the verge of waking up, my mom walks from the kitchen to her bedroom, in which you have to pass the living room in between. She asks, are you both okay? Asking from her bedroom. Not thinking much, my fiance and I both answer yes. In that moment, I got confused because I remember my mom telling me earlier in the morning that she was heading to town and she wouldn't be back until the afternoon. I get up from the couch, go to check her bedroom, and there is no sight of my mom anywhere. I told my mom about this and she confirmed that she had been in town from 7 a.m. to 5 p.m. My fiance and I still talk about this to this day, and we are still freaked out about this. So my first thought was obviously a dream, but the fact that they both experienced it is the thing I can't get past. So what do you think happened here? Some sort of shared dream experience, something to do with parallel universes, some weird ghost thing? At this point, I have no idea. In our number 6 spot today, we have the train to nowhere. It doesn't matter what train you're on, where it is, or whether it's underground or above ground, when the doors close, everything is lawless. I feel like trains are always the portal to another world, and this story only proves my theory. This story reads, quote, 3 years ago I was riding a train, got my ticket checked and took my seat. A few stops later, someone else turned up and seemed to have booked the exact same seat to the same destination. The same train conductor that checked my ticket earlier came, we compared our tickets, and it turned out I was booked on a non-existent train number with the same destination and time, but strangely enough, I had the same name as the one I shared a seat number with. Tried to check up on the number for my ticket afterwards and didn't get any hits for my actual train number. This is fully some platform 9 3/4 stuff that I cannot understand. In our number 5 spot today, we have Am I Really Here? Okay, this Reddit story starts off with the OP explaining that on February 20th, 2022, they dreamed that they were in a car accident. They then go into extremely vivid detail of the scenario that led up to the accident itself, and then the aftermath of it, and they could so viscerally feel.
Hey, what's going on?
Feel all of the things as they were happening. Their car ended up in water and they found themselves unable to escape, and they explained the thoughts that flashed through their mind of their family. Their phone was nearby and they managed to call their girlfriend, who didn't answer, and they left one last voicemail. It's all very detailed and horrifyingly sad, and they end it by writing, quote, I remember crying to myself, trying to think of something else I could do to get out of this, to survive, but the water kept rising, and in the end I simply stared up through it at the faint flashing light at the surface, blue and red. I prayed until my vision went black and I couldn't fight to hold my breath any longer. And then I woke up, alone in bed, freezing with a cold sweat, but awake and confused. I don't know how or why I'm here, because I died. I felt my body die. I felt the water enter my lungs and the pain that it caused. I felt it all. I shouldn't be here. So this person thinks that they passed away in one reality and jumped into this one where that was all just a terrible nightmare. That is horrifying. That would be the most terrifying experience ever. Was this just a very vivid nightmare or an example of someone who jumped universes? In our number 4 spot today, we have The Real Me. Okay, this story is a bit of a longer one, but it's so worth it, I swear. It reads, quote, I was shopping at a thrift store in a small town I lived in several years ago. I was looking around and happened to be near the checkout counter. An old lady came out from the back and said, "Are you?" said my name. I said yes, figuring I'd worked with her or something in the past, although she didn't look familiar to me. My name is not super common anymore, although I do see it on personalized.
Starting off Up at number 10 now, we have the Megalodon. Megalodon was the biggest shark that ever lived. They went extinct about 2.6 million years ago. Scientists think they could have grown to an insane 60 feet in length. That's about 3 times as long as the largest great white shark ever found. Here's how big they are. Before modern science identified them as a prehistoric species of shark, people used to think the Megalodon teeth they'd found were actually dragon tongues. Others said they belonged to giant serpents, or even that they were rocks that had fallen from the moon. Just think how big and scary it had to be for people to think that your teeth belonged to dragons or outer space. It used to feed on prehistoric whales, and unlike modern sharks, which go for the soft underbelly of their prey, Megalodon just went for the whole thing. They would bite down on the whale's chest with some 41,000 pounds of force, the strongest ever recorded, and simply crush the whale's chest cavity and organs. They didn't stand a chance, and unless you're an even bigger whale watching this video, you probably wouldn't either.
Man, hurry up, man. You doing all this extra shit. Yo, why is Tom looking like
Next up at number 9 now, we have Phobiromis pattersoni. This was a huge rat. Some scientists have even called it Ratzilla. Technically, it wasn't a rat, but if you're scared of them, I bet you'd be scared of this. They reached a whopping 9.8 feet long. Their tails alone reached 4.9 feet. They had the weight to go with it too, often reaching over 1,500 pounds. Like most rodents, they had big incisor teeth. In the case of Ratzilla though, their incisor teeth were about a foot long. It's a good job that a herbivores and use those teeth for plant life. However, I don't think that noise would do much to calm people if they were suddenly seen running around the streets at night. Coming at number 8 now, we have the Titanoboa. Everyone with a phobia of snakes, please look away now. This was a massive snake, thought to actually be the largest that's ever lived. Its name literally means Titanic boa. It lived around 60 million years ago. The largest individuals reached up to 42 feet in length and weighed over 2,500 pounds. That's well over a ton for a snake. It could grow this big because the Earth's climate was a lot warmer back then. As the climate began to cool over the next few million years, only smaller snakes could survive, and snakes like the Titanoboa began to disappear. Probably a good thing for us humans, because we would not want to be running around worrying about snakes that weigh as much as your average rhino. No thanks. Next up at number 7 now, we have Dungliosteus. This is a fish that lived about 370 million years ago during the late Devonian period. These things were big, growing up to 30 feet in length and weighing over a ton. What's most scary about them is their bite. This fish could bite down on its prey with a force of some 6,000 newtons. That might not mean anything to you until I say that's almost about 4 times the bite strength of a polar bear. This fish could bite your arm clean off you, including the bone. Its jaws were so efficient they could hinge them open and snap them shut in a matter of milliseconds. If we were to bring this species back to life, people might worry about them more than sharks. At number 6 now, we have the Megapiranha. Unlike a lot of scientific names on this list, the Megapiranha has a kind of obvious one. It was a giant piranha fish that lived about 10 million years ago. They grew to around 3 feet long, and unlike modern piranhas, they had not 1 but 2 separate rows of teeth. Scientists aren't even sure how hard they could bite, but some estimates go as high as 4,749 newtons. If that's the case, they would bite more than twice as hard as a hippo. Neither of those sounds fun, but one definitely sounds worse. Moving on to number 5 now, we have Gigantopithecus. In many ways, this creature is what we call Bigfoot. It lived between 9 million to 100,000 years ago in Asia and was the largest ape on Earth. They stood about 10 feet tall, and their diets were mostly vegetarian. When I say stand, I mean stand in the way gorillas and chimpanzees do. It's thought they walked on all 4s. However,
like the taste of fresh apples? At Angry Orchard, we use real fruit from our 100-year-old orchard. And 2 apples in every bottle of Angry Orchard. So relax with the crisp Angry Orchard hard cider. Madly refreshing.
However, a small number of scientists do think they walked on 2 legs like humans. Either way, with a 12-foot arm span, you'd be best to stay clear of this giant and unpredictable ape. Next up at number 4 now, we have Helicoprion. This was a shark-like creature that lived some 290 million years ago during the early Permian era. We've seen some very weird creatures on the list so far, but this might just beat them all. The Helicoprion is famous for his spirally arranged clusters of teeth known as tooth walls. This bizarre set of teeth would have reached about 24 inches in length. Moving on to number 3 now, we have the short-faced bear. The scientific name for these is the Arctodus. They first appeared in the fossil record 1.8 8 million years ago and seemed to survive all the way up until just 11,000 years ago. So, a pretty close call for us modern
11,000 years
One
is pretty
specimen
close for
found
us to be
weighed
killing shit.
2,110 pounds. They stood up to 12 feet tall on their hind legs, about twice the height of the average human male. Their vertical arm reach extended up to a further 14 feet. I could keep giving you guys stats on just how monstrous these bears were. Between those ones and the pictures you're seeing now, I think you get the idea. They were 50% larger than the biggest polar bears in recorded history. Scientists estimate they needed a whopping 35 pounds of meat a day just to survive. If we brought them back from extinction, I'm sure they wouldn't mind human meat being a part of that. Next up at number 2 now, we have the Meganeura. Dragonflies are nice, right? They're pretty cool looking creatures you find fluttering around ponds and rivers. They're a little bit freaky if they land on you, but, you know, hey, at least they're small. Not Meganeura, though. This massive dragonfly-like creature lived about 300 million years ago during a Carboniferous period. Its wingspan could reach up to 30 inches, making this thing about the size of a 6-month-old baby. Don't ask me why I'm using a baby as a reference. It's just the best comparison I could find. They reach this size because insects need more oxygen the bigger they are. Back then, the oxygen levels in the atmosphere were higher than the current 20% we have today. This allowed insects, including Meganeura, to grow insanely big. You wouldn't need your hand to bat this thing away, more like a baseball bat. And finally, at number 1 now, we have Deinosuchus. This is an extinct relation of the modern alligator that lived some 80 to 73 million years ago. That means it was alive at the same time as T-Rex. In fact, it's thought these two actually fought it out back then. They are thought to have been up to 33 feet in length and have weighed as much as 5 tons. It looks like the T-Rex might not have been much of a match for this oversized alligator. There have actually been T-Rex fossils found with massive Deinosuchus bites found in them. Perhaps they were just defending their territories from T-Rexes, or perhaps they saw them as food. Either way, they definitely were not scared of T-Rexes, and so they definitely wouldn't be scared of us. I get the feeling if we brought them back from extinction, that might be where we're heading next. Starting off at number 10 now, we have Spinosaurus. Let me start by asking you guys a question. What's the largest carnivorous dinosaur of all time? Surely,
I'm trying my Dark Magician
deck. They've always been portrayed as the top dogs. Their name literally translates to Tyrant Lizard King. I was surprised to learn that it's actually the Spinosaurus, perhaps the largest known carnivorous dinosaur of all time. It lived about 100 million years ago. Estimates put the length of these things about 60 feet, while weighing as much as 23 tons. That's 3.5 times as much as the T-Rex. If its sheer size was scary enough, you might have guessed from its name, but it also had very big spines. They found out across its back and formed what is usually referred to as its sail. What scientists aren't sure about is if the spines were covered in fat and looked kind of like a huge camel hump thing. A camel the size of a small building.
Spinosaurus is a predator, but one that hunts in water. It's Ichthyophagous, a fish eater.
Coming at number 9 now, we have the giant crocodile. That's right.
Dark Magician Grow.
To make the crocodile even more scary was to give it more teeth. Wrong. Just make them way bigger, and they really did exist. Scientific name for this animal is Sarcos.
You'll say, we have no yada yada. How many people do I need to get for a best price? Only 4. Details matter. Visible has no activation fees, no need for a family plan. Just one-line wireless on Verizon's network for $25 a month, every month.
These Cheez-It Puffs are so cheesy, airy, and puffy. How'd you do it?
With the Puffterizer 5000, anything can be craveably puffy.
Cheez-It Puffed. Defy your cheese-spectations.
Duchess. They lived around 112 million years ago during the early Cretaceous period in what is now Africa and South America. These things weighed about 8 tons and grew up to 40 feet in length. It's almost twice as long as the biggest living crocodiles today. The giant crocodile would probably laugh at the crocodiles we have today. Then it would eat them, and it would eat us, then it would laugh. Luckily, they died out over 100 million years ago. Next up at number 8 now, we have the walking worm. The scientific name for this one is Hallucigenia fortis. It was part of a family of walking worms. They looked like worms, they acted like worms, but they had legs, actual little legs. Get this, scientists discovered their fossils in Canada and China. They were so weirded out by their appearance, they called them hallucigenia, as in hallucinogenic, like hallucinogenic drugs. These things are so weird looking, the scientists basically thought they were tripping out. That's what I'm taking from that story. I'm thinking if normal worms usually creep people out a bit,
Dark
then a
magicians.
big walking one that looks like
The
it came
dark
from a Harry
magicians.
Potter book might be a little bit too much. Moving on to number 7 now, we have Androsarchus. Think of a big scary mammal. A lion, tiger, maybe a bear. Oh my, this thing would eat them for breakfast. Androsarchus lived in what is now China about 45 million years ago. The only known skull of this creature was discovered in Mongolia in 1923. It's now on display in the American Museum of History in New York. It was from only this skull and a few bones that scientists were able to make an accurate construction of what this beast would have looked like. When they finished the model, they were pretty shocked to see that it would have weighed about 4,000 pounds. That would possibly make it the largest land-dwelling mammal predator ever. We're talking bigger than all the lions, tigers, and bears. Oh my. If you don't want to step into a ring with any of those animals, well, those animals wouldn't want to step into a ring with this thing. Next up at number 6 now, we have the pig from hell. Usually creep people out a bit, then a big walking one that looks like it came from a Harry Potter book might be a little bit too much. Moving on to number 7 now, we have Androsarchus. Think of a big scary mammal. A lion, tiger, maybe a bear. Oh my, this thing would eat them for breakfast. Androsarchus lived in what is now China about 45 million years ago. The only known skull of this creature was discovered in Mongolia in 1923. It's now on display in the American Museum of History in New York. It was from only this skull and a few bones that scientists were able to make an accurate construction of what this beast would have looked like. When they finished the model, they were pretty shocked to see that it would have weighed about 4,000 pounds. That would possibly make it the largest land-dwelling mammal predator ever. We're talking bigger than all the lions, tigers, and bears. Oh my. If you don't want to step into a ring with any of those animals, well, those animals wouldn't want to step into a ring with this thing. Next up at number 6 now, we have the pig from hell. I'll admit, that's the name I gave it. You'll see why though. This mammal is known as the Entelodon. It lived 37 to 28 million years ago all across Eurasia. If we were around back then, we probably would have said they looked like pigs, but like really terrifying ones. Despite being on all fours, these things were 4.5 feet tall. They were massive. Some scientists say they had a ravaging appetite for meat. These things would eat you, they'd eat me, and if there wasn't any of the meat around, they'd end up eating each other. You heard me right.
That shit's vicious, but you know, even pigs nowadays do that shit. You know, they're very cannibalistic. The motherfuckers is different. You heard?
Own kind. How does that sound to you? Imagine one of these things charging right at you.
But he acting on surprise and shit like humans don't do that,
Eating
man.
their fill for the day, or you be the filling. Next up, number 5 now, we have the 3-foot-long scorpion. That is the scientific name, just kidding. This is actually Pulmonoscorpius. It looks just like modern scorpions. It had the same front claws and sting in its tail. The only difference is this thing was bloody massive. It lived over 300 million years ago during the Carboniferous period, and this helps explain why these things grew so massive. Back then, the oxygen content in Earth's atmosphere was a lot higher. Scientists know that this is one of the key factors in determining how big some creatures get. So if you don't like creepy crawlies, just be glad there isn't too much oxygen in the air. We know this creature had venom, like many modern scorpions, but it's difficult to know just how toxic it would have been. One thing's for sure though, you wouldn't want to stick around these things to find out. If modern day scorpions cause problems for us today, imagine these 3-foot versions running around stinging us. No thank you. Moving on to number 4 now, we have the Smilodon. I absolutely love this one. I remember watching a show as a kid called Walking with Beasts that featured this very animal. Check it out if you haven't heard of it. The Smilodon lived from 2.5 million years ago to just 10,000 years ago. If you recognize the picture on the screen right now, you may know this creature by its much more famous name, the saber-toothed tiger. They were a force to be reckoned with. They had very well-built forelimbs and exceptionally big canine teeth. They spread out all over the world and came in a number of different types. The biggest ones were thought to have weighed up to 880 pounds. You might think, oh, well, I'm glad humans never had to live alongside these beasts. Well, think again. They did. Considering the saber-toothed tiger didn't die out until about 100,000 years ago, there were already modern humans, just like me and you, walking around back then. Many of them... got probably eaten by these big cats as they had nothing more than a simple spear to defend themselves. They died so that we could live. I vote that we don't bring them back. Next up at number 3 now, we have the terror bird. That's the nickname given to Forus racidae, and I think the nickname suits it very well. They were the largest species of apex predators in South America for about 60 million years, starting 62 million years ago. That's a very, very long time. You can't even picture how long these things were the top dogs for. They were huge, standing up to 9.8 feet tall. They were flightless birds too. That's quite strange to think about. We usually think of flightless birds as quite harmless. Dodos and penguins, maybe ostriches could give you a good slash, but generally speaking, it's the flying hawks and things that are the scariest. This creature will make you think twice though. The terror birds were big. They weighed up to half a ton. Okay, so maybe that means you can outrun them. Oh no, probably not. It's thought they can actually run as fast as a cheetah. That's about 75 miles an hour. If you see a terror bird and the terror bird sees you, just give up. Accept your fate as its lunch. Coming at number 2 now, we have the giant bird. That's my name for it. The real name for this creature is Pelagornis sandersi. It's one of the largest flying birds ever discovered. It lived 25 million years ago during the Oligocene era. This thing was huge. You may think you've seen a big bird in your time, maybe a pigeon or a seagull. Nah, you've not seen a big bird. Look at the size of this. It had a wingspan of up to 24 feet. Its wingspan was bigger than a giraffe is tall. Just try and imagine that. Perhaps fittingly for one of the largest flying creatures to ever live, the only fossil of it was discovered in 1983 by construction workers at Charleston International Airport, South Carolina. And finally, number 1 now, we have Quetzalcoatlus. I'm not even sure how to start off with this one. Just look at this thing. This creature was a pterosaur. They lived alongside dinosaurs, but were very much their own thing. The Quetzalcoatlus was one of the largest flying animals of all time. It was toothless, it had a long stiff neck, and was just generally a bit of an oddball. Its wingspan was 52 feet. Remember the massive bird we were talking about just earlier? This creature had a wingspan twice that size. It's hard to even imagine how big this thing was. Ever since its discovery, people have been fascinated by it. It's been featured in documentaries and movies around the world. Perhaps the favorite one that I found is from Clash of the Dinosaurs. We already know that's wrong anyway, but wait till you hear this. The show portrayed them as having ultraviolet vision to locate dinosaur urine while hunting in the air. I'm obviously mocking this, but I do kind of want to watch it. Starting off at number 10 now, we have the Epicyon. That name roughly translates to more than dog, and you're about to see exactly why. It lived in North America about 15 million years ago, where it really was the top dog. They grew to about 5 feet in length and weighed up to 300 pounds. They had a massive head as well, even bigger than mine, and very powerful jaws. It's resulted in their skull looking more like a lion's than any canine species. This big dog needed to be big because it shared its territory with ancient big cats and bears. Epicyon would have regularly clashed with them for food and territory. Now, scientists think its main prey would have been the Apicamelus, a type of camel that lived in North America around that time. That's right, if you're from North America, there could have been giant dogs chasing camels on the exact same spot where you're now standing. There's a thought. Next up at number 9 now, we have the Pelagornis sandersi. You could also call this one the seagull from hell. They lived around 25 million years ago. Their wingspan is estimated to be between 20 and 24 feet. That is the largest wingspan on a flying bird ever discovered. That wingspan is about the size of an orca whale. It's also twice the wingspan of the modern day wandering albatross. Its proportions are so insane that scientists are actually surprised that it could even fly at all. It could have weighed up to 88 pounds, considered too heavy to fly. Right now, the best theory is that it could fly because of its relatively small body and long wings, and also that it spent most of its time over the ocean. In fact, they thought it could only take off by hopping over the edge of a cliff. Coming in number 8 now, we have the Acrophysta. This is an extinct group of sperm whales that lived between 13 and 5 million years ago. Modern day sperm whales are known for their very large teeth, but they had nothing on the Acrophysta. Unlike modern day sperm whales, they had huge, deeply rooted teeth in both their upper and lower jaws. Modern day sperm whales only have that in their lower jaw. It had a short and pointed snout. This, coupled with the robust, curved front teeth, suggests that Acrophysta hunted very large prey, using its back teeth for shearing the meat apart. They had big heads, were very strong, and had
This is Corona Premier. It's the light beer you didn't know was a light beer. Until right. Wait for it. Wait for it. Wait for it.
Upwards curved Y-shaped jaws. They were fairly big creatures, thought to have reached up to 14 feet in size, not as big as modern-day orcas, about the size of giant dolphins. Strangely enough, a lot of scientific debate that revolves around this creature is about whether or not it had a top lip. I guess it's just going to be one of those big, unanswered life questions. Moving on to number 7 now, we have the Anomalocaris. This creature is also known as the abnormal shrimp, which I love. It really is a perfect description. It's thought to be one of the first predators on Earth. That's quite a title to have. It had a large head and a single pair of large compound eyes on stalks that comprised of around 16,000 different lenses. Its mouth was made up of 32 overlapping plates, 4 large and 28 small, that resembled a sort of pineapple ring with the center replaced by a series of serrated prongs. Looking at models of them today, they resemble small shrimps, except they were a lot bigger than that. They could be over 3.3 feet long, had 2 arms over 7 inches long that protruded from their mouth with barb-like spikes coming out. They ate hard sea creatures for breakfast, lunch and dinner. This is presumed because of the robust spines of their appendages. Basically, you wouldn't want one of these things getting their mouth around your leg and say bye to your leg. Next up at number 6 now, we have the Adestus. This shark lived from 400 to 300 million years ago. If you've watched one of our previous videos in the series, you may think it looks a little bit like the Helicoprion, the one with the big sort of circular saw teeth. Well, they actually belong to the same family, but Adestus had more of an arc of teeth on both the roof and floor of its mouth. After its discovery, scientists were baffled as to how it used this teeth formation to catch and eat its prey. For a while, it was thought that it used its teeth like scissors, bringing the top and bottom together to sort of crush and mash its prey into digestible chunks. Now though, the theory has changed. New research by Wayne M. Itano of the University of Colorado suggests that Adestus used its outwardly projecting teeth in a vertical thrashing manner. It literally thrashed its prey to death. Hey, I mean, whatever works. With quick and strong up and down movements, the shark would have slashed and cut up its prey in seconds before ingesting it whole. I think we've all eaten like that once or twice in our life, maybe when we're really hungry, but that is what Adestus did every day. Coming at number 5 now, we have the Argavantes. These birds were bloody huge, probably second only in wingspan to the Pelagornis that we talked about on number 9. For me though, these things were even scarier. Imagine vultures that stood taller than adult humans. Yeah, now you're starting to get it. They lived between 9 and 6.8 million years ago and had territories of up to 200 square miles. They would fly these incredible distances looking for food. Now, because of its huge size, it's thought that this bird may have actually been unsuited to hunting its own prey and instead lived as a scavenger, taking kills from other carnivores. Just like our giant seagull friends from earlier in the video, scientists have been trying to figure out how this bird was able to fly, as it seems to break the known laws of bird flight, physically speaking. Of course, I'm not saying there are actual laws about birds flying.
Shutting it down, brother man. I'm highlighting you tomorrow.
Not powerful enough for wing flapping for extended